Hello everyone, today's video is going to be an intro into functions. So what are functions? Well, functions are basically pieces of code that we can reuse at different parts of our code. So let's take just a crazy random example. So let's say that I wanted to do something like this again and again. So I could copy and paste it 5 times. And if I pull up the browser, we'll see in the Chrome DevTools that it is logged 5 times. Not very efficient, but it's well enough. A lot of copying and pasting. So what we could do instead is, if for whatever reason I wanted to do this again and again, we could put it in a function. And so the standard function declaration begins with the function keyword, the name of the function that you're going to use, a set of parentheses, and curly braces. So the name can be whatever you want. I'm calling it greeting because that's kind of what I'm going to be doing in this code. And what I basically can do is put the code that I want to reuse inside of the code block of the function. So this is a very simplistic example, but it's one that demonstrates just how to set up a function. So we can then call greeting, and we just call it greeting, add a set of parentheses, and then add a semicolon. And so now, instead of calling console log a bunch of times, I could use greeting wherever I wanted to log this message. And just to show that it works, if I refresh the page, we will see, hello, my name is Michael. It's firing twice. And I want to trace the actual call for you, and we can talk about it again. So what happens when JavaScript loads this file is that it sees this greeting, it sees these parentheses and says, hey, this is a function call. And it's going to look for the name of this function. So it'll find it, run the code inside of it, and then go back to the end. So it says, hey, I'm done running this function. Let me go back to where I called it. And now I'm going to go to the next line, and it'll repeat because the function call to the same thing. It'll go down here, run this code, and then go to the end. So you'll see functions defined a few different ways. This is a direct function declaration, but you could also see something like this: const greeting equals this function. And just so that we're not conflicting in our naming here, we'll just call this greeting 1. So you can also see a variable with the name of the variable representing the name of the function, and then assigning it an actual function. And so instead of putting the function name right here, like we have up here, you can use it as a variable name and then assign it. So if let's call it here, and let's I'm gonna put these down here just for organization's sake. So just to differentiate it, I'll put Todd. And so now we'll see, and that's the only difference. Otherwise, the functions work basically the same way. So it's just a place where we have a function call. It says, oh, let me go to where this greeting function is defined. It's here. Run the code, then go back to the end. And then in the next line, oh, what's the function greeting? This one. Let's run the code inside. Get to the end. And then it goes to greeting 1. It says, oh, what's the name of this function? Oh, it's this. Run this code. and go to the end. So there's no difference between defining a function this way and defining it this way per se. Either one can be used, and you'll call the function the same way. So just to really define the difference, these are definitions of functions up here, and these are function calls. So those are two parts. If you just define functions, this doesn't run any code. Without calling the function, you don't actually run any code. You just kind of set up the code to be ran. So there's two parts: defining the function and then actually calling it down here. Now, one last function form I want to show you, just for the sake of completing your knowledge. I'm not going to go too far in depth into it. Is the arrow function. So if we do greeting2, the arrow function, instead of using the function keyword, uses a set of parentheses, this arrow, and then like this. So you just get rid of the function, add an arrow next to it, and it works the same way. There are some nice things you can do with arrow functions. Arrow functions were introduced in ES6 or ES 2015. And unlike function declarations like this, you have to assign arrow functions to a variable like this. So const greeting equals arrow function. You can't do something like function declarations. So these are a newer way of writing function definitions. It's not one I'm going to go too much in depth with because they're really useful in certain circumstances that aren't covered in this course, but you'll see them a bit if you take the intermediate course. So that's all. That's a gentle introduction into how to write a function definition, how to call it. There's more to functions than this, and we will go over it in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.